The night before my stepson Tyler's wedding, he stood hesitantly at the kitchen doorway. "Grace," he said, "I know you've looked out for me all these years. But this wedding, it's a big deal. I want to go to the cemetery first thing in the morning. I need to see my mom. She can't be there in person, but I want her to be part of it." I nodded. I thought he was right to do that. I didn't say anything else. I had just slid a few slices of bread into the toaster, getting dinner ready for him when he spoke again. "And, tomorrow I'd rather you not come to the wedding. I don't think it's right for you to be there." That landed in my spine like a chunk of ice. All right then. If I wasn't welcome at the wedding, then I suppose there'd be no moment to hand over the deed to that beachfront house I'd planned to sign over to them at the reception. Or the $100,000 check tucked inside the envelope. When the wedding was over and Ronald walked through the front door, he didn't even try to hide his anger. "Tyler just got married and you didn't give him a single gift?" I looked him straight in the eye, my voice cooler than his. "Nope. Not a thing." The milk in the saucepan bubbled gently, sending up wisps of steam. I was making Tyler's childhood favorite, vanilla custard pudding. Just moments ago he'd smiled at me and said, "Grace, I'm getting married tomorrow. Can I have this one last time the way you always make it?" How could I say no? I'd raised him since he was 10. I'd watched him grow into the man he was about to become. I was just about to sprinkle cinnamon over the pudding when he pushed the kitchen door open again. This time the smile was gone. His face had turned solemn. "Grace," he began, "this wedding, it means a lot to me. I want to go to my mom's grave first thing in the morning. Just to talk to her. Tell her what's happening." Tyler's biological mother had died when he was 5. More than a decade had passed and he still remembered her, still wanted to visit her. That hit me with a sharp, unexpected ache. I nodded, managing a smile. "Of course." He lingered at the kitchen doorway, head lowered, fidgeting like something was still on his mind. After a few heavy seconds he finally said the words that nearly knocked the breath out of me. "And I'd rather you didn't come to the wedding. I just don't think it's right for you to be there." Then he turned and walked out, leaving me standing there stunned. It felt like someone had poured the boiling water from the stove straight onto my chest. 15 years. I'd taken care of him for 15 years. And on the most important day of his life he didn't want me there? I fought to steady myself, carried the custard to the living room. Ronald was on the couch, one leg propped up, flipping through TV channels with the remote, not even glancing my way. I kept my voice from shaking as I asked, "Where's Tyler?" "He went out. Bachelor party with the guys," Ronald replied, eyes still glued to the screen. I nodded, but my heart felt like it had dropped into an ice bath. Some loud laugh track from the sitcom on TV echoed through the room, unbearably out of place. I couldn't even muster a smile. Ronald didn't notice a thing. He was used to me like this, quiet, helpful, always doing what needed to be done without complaint. But this time something inside me cracked. I asked, "Did you know Tyler didn't want me at the wedding?" I stared at him, searching his face for the truth. His eyes darted away. He didn't meet my gaze. "Yeah, he just didn't want people to get the wrong idea, that's all." He coughed, reached for the remote again, pretending to be casual. "It's not that he doesn't appreciate you. He thinks it would be better if that seat stayed empty, like it's still reserved for his real mom. You get that, right?" He added, "It's just symbolic. He still sees you as his mom deep down." I let out a laugh in my head. Hollow. Tyler was scared of judgment, what people would say, how it might look. He was scared of everyone's opinions, everyone except mine. I was the only one he didn't care to protect. I asked slowly, word by word, "So you knew? And you didn't tell me?" Ronald froze for 2 seconds, then suddenly stood and slammed the remote down on the couch. The loud thud echoed through the quiet room. "Grace, stop being so dramatic. So what if he didn't want you there? You're really this upset over a wedding? You're really going to pick a fight with a woman who's been dead for over 10 years? I used to believe that all these years of pouring myself into this family, loving them like my own, sacrificing without a second thought, would at least earn me a little respect. But clearly I meant nothing. The next morning, before the sun had fully risen, Ronald was already up. I didn't open my eyes, but I could hear everything. The rustle of his clothes, the thud of his shoes hitting the floor, the jingle of his keys. Each sound jabbed into my nerves like tiny needles. He straightened his tie, stepped to the side of the bed and said quietly, Grace, I'm heading out. Do you want me to bring anything for you? I didn't answer. I just turned over, giving him my back. He paused for a few seconds, let out a sigh, then left the room. The door clicked shut behind him and the whole house fell into silence, broken only by the steady ticking of the clock. Hollow. It wasn't until almost 9 that I finally got out of bed, slow and mechanical, like someone had set me on autopilot. I washed my face, brushed my teeth, tidied up the bedroom, each motion numb, detached, like I was watching someone else act out a part in a play I wasn't in anymore. Even the sound of running water felt distant, like it was happening underwater. When I finally made it to the porch and reached for my coat, hoping to catch a breath of fresh air, Joanne from next door was already walking by with her dog. She waved at me cheerfully. Grace, you're out late today. Isn't today Tyler's wedding? I forced a smile. It barely moved my lips. Good morning. Joanne blinked, then her expression shifted awkwardly. She gave a tight smile. Sorry. I shouldn't have said anything. Morning. I didn't explain. Didn't respond. Just gave her a small nod. When we moved to this little town, Tyler was already 10. I remember my parents gently suggesting I ask Ronald to help get Tyler to start calling me Mom, just so it would look more like a real family in front of the neighbors. But Tyler had refused. Stubbornly. Even with Ronald gently nudging him, explaining, encouraging, he never changed it. I was always Grace. Back then I told myself he was just young. Just not ready. I believed, honestly believed, that if I gave it enough time, if I gave him enough love, he would come around. But the years passed. He never did. The neighbors all eventually figured it out. I wasn't his mom. I was his stepmother. And today, me not showing up at his wedding, that would be the next piece of gossip making the rounds. No one would say Tyler was ungrateful. No, they'd just whisper behind closed doors, wondering what I must have done wrong, what kind of stepmother fails to get invited to her stepson's wedding. I used to care. I used to lie awake wondering what I could fix, what I'd missed. But now, I'm tired. Truly, deeply tired. Ronald came back sometime after 2 in the afternoon. He walked in with 2 clear plastic takeout boxes, leftovers from the wedding. One held soggy pasta soaked in heavy cream sauce. The other had slices of cake so sweet I could smell the sugar from across the room. I didn't need a second glance to know I couldn't eat any of it. Not with my high blood pressure, high blood sugar, and all the doctor's warnings ringing in my ears about avoiding junk like this. He set the boxes on the kitchen counter. His face was pinched, sour, like spoiled milk. He stood there for a few moments, looking like he was wrestling with himself, but then the words burst out anyway. Grace, didn't you say you had a gift for Tyler? I turned toward him, my voice like frost. I didn't go to the wedding. How would I give it to him? His face flushed red in an instant. He jabbed a finger toward me, his voice rising. You didn't give him anything? His eyes filled with disappointment. He shook his head and sighed like I was the one who'd embarrassed the family. Then, as if realizing he'd pushed too far, he shifted tones, put on a softer, more reasonable face. You know how Tyler is, always been that way, gets stuck in his own head. He was probably just nervous. He didn't mean it like that. Don't take it personally. I didn't say a word. I just stared at him, waiting for the line I knew was coming. He actually mentioned you today, you know. He paused, buying himself time, trying to wrap the lie in something warm and believable. He said he remembers everything you did for him. That he's really grateful. I didn't flinch. Not a twitch of emotion on my face. I didn't even bother pretending. But Ronald thought that was enough. He came over, reached out with his soft, pampered hands, the hands that had never scrubbed a dish or mopped a floor, and laid them gently on my calloused fingers. Come on, Grace, he said softly, voice dripping with lukewarm charm. We've been together 15 years. Let's not ruin it over something like this. I'm saying I'm sorry, aren't I? He gave me that weak smile. I didn't even get to eat at the reception. Why don't you make us some sandwiches? We can sit down together and have our own little celebration. He thought that was all it would take. Just one excuse, one easy out. He thought I'd do what I always did, swallow my pride, smooth things over, take care of what was broken. But not this time. I pulled my hand away. Then, without hesitation, I grabbed the greasy containers off the counter and dumped them into the trash with a hard, echoing thud. That sound, that one clean final slam, wasn't just food hitting the bin. It was 15 years of silent loyalty, self-denial, and hoping to be seen, all thrown out in one motion. Don't you know I have high blood pressure and high blood sugar? Who exactly are those greasy leftovers for? I lifted my head and looked him straight in the eye. My voice was suddenly clear, steady, sharp as glass. You're right, Ronald. We've been together for 15 years. So let me stop sugarcoating things. No, I didn't prepare a gift. And yes, I've made up my mind. I want a divorce. Ronald froze. His mouth hung open like a puppet mid-sentence caught in a draft. What did you just say? He stammered. You're divorcing me over this? Over something so small? I didn't answer. I walked straight into the bedroom and dragged out the suitcase I hadn't touched in years, its fabric thick with dust. Ronald stood at the end of the hallway, irritation rising in his voice. What is this? Seriously, Grace? Just because Tyler didn't want you at the wedding? I already explained it to you. Are you really still hung up on that? What now, you're gonna storm out and run away from home? I looked at the man I'd shared a bed with for a decade and a half, and I felt something inside me finally snap. He was always so respected at school, admired for being soft-spoken and courteous. But in this house all he gave me was distance, silence, and neglect. I had endured too much for too long. In 15 years I've only left this house once. That was 13 years ago, I said, my voice trembling but resolute. Do you even remember what it was about? He opened his mouth but nothing came out. That's fine. I remember. I stared into his eyes. Let's end this, Ronald. Peacefully if possible. 14 years ago Tyler was still in elementary school. One day the school called to say he'd gotten into a fight during lunch, serious enough to warrant a parent coming in. My heart was in my throat as I rushed to the school, terrified he'd been hurt. But the moment I stepped through those doors he shouted across the hallway in front of his classmates and teachers. I don't want you picking me up. I want my dad. Not you. You're not my mom. He screamed it so loudly the entire hallway fell silent. I froze on the spot. When I stepped forward to calm him down he kicked me in the shin and burst into tears, yelling through his sobs. You're not my mom. You can't tell me what to do. I lost control for a moment. I scolded him quietly but firmly. He cried harder, almost violently, cursing me through the tears. Every word hit like a thunderclap straight to my chest. When Ronald finally showed up his face was like stone. He said nothing, just yanked Tyler aside and hissed something in his ear. He apologized to the teachers, then took us both home. Tyler did say sorry eventually, but he kept sobbing the entire way back like he was the only one who'd been wounded. That night my parents came over only to tell me I'd overstepped. That I didn't understand how to be a stepmother. That I never should have scolded a child in public. Being a stepmother. People say it's easy, people say it's hard. Truth is, it's a trap either way. Be too strict and you're cold, harsh, unmotherly. Be too soft and you're careless, clearly not treating the child like your own. Whatever you do, it's wrong. That night I packed a small bag, threw it in the back of my car and stayed at a friend's place for a while. I didn't leave a note. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't look back. The truth is, I'd already had a hysterectomy by then. I knew I would never have children of my own. And I thought, maybe I could live like that. Alone. But my parents worried. They saw me getting older, still single, and they pushed me to give marriage another chance. They said Ronald was a good man. Widowed. Raising a boy. He could use someone like me. I gave in. And then, just a couple of years after the wedding, my father died of a sudden heart attack. My mother followed 3 years ago after a long illness. I'm an only child. Ronald knows, I have no one else left. So when he stood at the door today and said, "Go ahead and leave, I'd love to see where you'd even go," what he was really doing was confirming the truth he's always counted on. That I have nowhere else to go. But he was wrong. Even if I had nowhere else to go, it was still better than staying in that house as an unpaid maid. I dragged my heavy suitcase up to my old friend Diane's front door. She lived in a weathered house out in the suburbs. The moment she opened the door she pulled me into a hug. She didn't ask a thing, just said, "Come in. We'll talk when you're ready." By the next morning she had already connected me with a lawyer, Valerie Hart. I returned to my apartment. As soon as I plugged in my phone the screen lit up with dozens of missed calls and voicemails. Most were from Ronald. The rest? From those relatives of his who never showed up but always had something to say. Their tone was nearly identical. Start with concern, escalate to scolding, and finish with outright commands. Ronald's cousin left a voicemail like he was reprimanding an employee who'd failed to meet quota. Grace, you've made your point. Now come home already before this turns into a circus. Then came his younger cousin. You're 50, not 25. Running around like this, what if something happens to you? Be sensible and come home. And of course, the queen of condescension, his older cousin Martha. What kind of message are you sending by not coming back? You're Tyler's mom. You're going to be the grandmother of his children. I let out a dry, bitter laugh. 15 years in that house, and this is what I get. Everyone feeling entitled to snap their fingers and order me around. They want me to crawl back? Dream on. I deleted every voicemail in one go. Just as I was about to shut off my phone, another name popped up on the screen. One I recognized instantly, one I hated seeing. Martha, Tyler's aunt. From day one, she treated me like a stain on her family name. She acted like she held the moral high ground simply because Tyler's mother had passed. And now, of course, she had something to say. I hesitated, then pressed play. Grace, you're really not coming home over something this small? You're too old to be throwing tantrums like this. Let's be honest, what kind of man would even want you at this age? Frankly, Ronald and Tyler are the only two who've ever put up with your attitude. Her tone was syrupy on the surface, but every word had barbs underneath. I smiled coldly and hit record. You think I'm still the soft one? Easy to push, easy to guilt into submission? You think I don't know what you've been whispering in Tyler's ear all these years? You really believe I haven't figured out how you taught him to perform just well enough to keep me hooked? I'd known it for a long time. But Tyler had these moments, fleeting little displays of affection that made me doubt myself, made me go soft. I bought into the lie for 15 years. Truth is, if he'd put on a decent show at that wedding, I probably would have kept lying to myself, convinced he was still a good kid. But he didn't even bother to fake it. I kept recording. Martha, you did a hell of a job teaching him how to say thank you. But you forgot to teach him how to follow through with the act. I was going to give him the deed to one of my properties during the reception, hand it to him in front of everyone, along with a $100,000 check. But your clever little nephew didn't want to play along. So I'm done. Oh, and do pass along this message. That food truck he's been dreaming about for years? I was ready to invest 70 grand. Tell him to keep dreaming. I wasn't surprised. If Ronald and Tyler ever found out what I had planned to give them, they'd probably drop to their knees, clutching their chests in dramatic regret. Sure enough, a few days later Ronald swallowed his pride and came to find me with Tyler in tow. They had no idea where I'd gone. Ronald only knew I had rental properties in the north and south sides of town. He'd gone door to door asking anyone who might know and came up empty. Eventually he stumbled on an old envelope at one of my former rental units. That clue led him straight to Diane's doorstep. It had only been 2 weeks, but he looked like a man who'd lost control of his entire life. His confidence was gone. His shirt was wrinkled beyond saving, his collar limp and unpressed, clearly missing the woman who used to hold his life together. They stood awkwardly in my doorway, father and son, like kids called into the principal's office. I leaned against the kitchen doorframe. Said nothing. Ronald spoke first. Grace. I'm sorry. It's my fault. I didn't raise Tyler right. Don't stay mad. It's not good for your health. He sounded sincere. His face strained into something like guilt, as if he actually meant it. I took a sip of coffee and stayed silent. Tyler shuffled his feet. It took him a long moment to speak. Grace. I know I messed up. I'm just not good at this kind of thing. I hope you can forgive me. His voice was low. His eyes wouldn't meet mine. His whole posture screamed guilt, same as when he used to lie as a kid and get caught. I looked up at him, cool and deliberate. My voice was even, calm, and sharp as a knife. Tyler, your eyes dart all over the place when you lie. You've been that way since you were little. This speech, was it Martha who coached you through it? The moment the words left my mouth, Tyler's face stiffened. Grace, this is between us. Leave my aunt out of it. Just as I thought. One poke and the mask cracks wide open. Ronald, seeing Tyler lose his cool, quickly patted his son's arm, half-heartedly stepping into his usual performance. Hey, watch your tone with Grace, he said in a mild voice, barely tapping Tyler like he was swatting lint off his sleeve. I knew this act. I'd seen it too many times. The strict father routine always came out when things went south, hoping I'd take the bait and play peacekeeper like I used to. But this time I didn't even bother blinking. When that failed, Ronald shifted gears. Time for the guilt trip. Since you left, I haven't been able to eat a proper dinner. My stomach's acting up again. My shirts aren't ironed. Even my students asked if something happened at home. I let out a soft laugh, not even lifting my eyes from my coffee. Ronald, don't you have a sister? The one who's always doing things for the good of the family? What? She can't make you a hot meal. He was stunned into silence, but Tyler exploded. He had always worshipped his aunt, ever since he was a boy. She could do no wrong in his eyes, probably ranked above his own father. What the hell is wrong with you? He snapped, pointing straight at me. When have I ever disrespected you? When has my dad ever treated you badly? You've lived in our house for 15 years, and now you're just walking out like we're the problem. You don't even explain yourself, just start blaming everyone else. Real mature Grace. I looked him right in the eyes, those furious, self-righteous eyes, and gave a thin, bitter smile. So you're finally done pretending, huh? Yes, I did live in your house for 15 years. And yes, I had food to eat and a roof over my head. But do you even realize what that cost me? I gave up a full-time job with the government. I walked away from my career so I could drive you to school, stay home when you were sick, help you with your homework. That wasn't free, Tyler. I held up my hands, slightly trembling, but my voice only grew steadier. These hands were soft 15 years ago. Smooth. Young. But now. I stretched them out between us. They're covered in calluses. Cracked. Wrinkled. The skin splitting open from years of cooking, cleaning, folding your laundry, scrubbing your bathroom. I turned my gaze to Ronald. Even Diane, look at her hands. She's the same age as me. 50, right? Guess how many times she's cleaned a toilet in her life. That day at Diane's place, she'd banged the table in fury when she heard what had happened. Her hands were like Ronald's, soft, neat, pampered. Time had touched her face, sure, but her fingers still looked like they belonged to someone who lived for herself. Mine? My hands looked like sandpaper, cracked, dry, beaten by 15 years of invisible labor. Same age, same gender. One still glides into dinner parties in heels and silk. The other looks like she's aged 20 years past her time. And yet these two men, this father and son, never once said thank you. Ronald lowered his eyes. He couldn't even look at my hands. His mouth was pressed in a hard line like he was physically swallowing back shame. But not Tyler. Tyler just doubled down. Well, someone else would have married my dad if you hadn't, he said, voice sharp and dismissive. It's just housework. Isn't that what you're supposed to do? The entitlement in his tone was so natural, so matter-of-fact, it actually stunned me for a beat. I stared at him ice cold. Did your aunt teach you that too? You have any idea what your precious aunt actually does around the house? Nothing. Cooking, laundry, even walking the dog. That's all your cousin's job. And where is she? Off at the spa, getting her nails done, sipping champagne with her girlfriends. And me? When you had a 103-degree fever, who stayed up all night watching over you? Who fed you medicine one spoon at a time, wiped your body down with cold towels, kept the ice packs coming so your brain wouldn't fry? Was it your aunt? No. She was out drinking lattes and posting selfies. And the laundry? Your uncle's shirts? Wasn't her doing, it was your cousin scrubbing those. Tyler didn't speak, didn't blink, didn't meet my eyes. Because he knew. Every word I said was the truth. I still remember, every time I tried to discipline Tyler, reminded him to study or finish his homework, I'd hear it echo back from his aunt's corner. Grace is too strict. She's cold. No warmth. But you should have seen how she raised her own kid. Not a single corner cut. Your cousin's top of his class now, isn't he? Nailed his SATs, applying for Ivy League with a full scholarship. Doesn't your aunt love bragging to your dad? Look at my son, how successful he is, right? My voice was calm, detached. But each word landed like a blade slicing just a little deeper. And what about me? I begged you to at least go to college. Told you, community college would be fine if nothing else. But you bought into her nonsense about making money early, enjoying life young. Ever stop to think how flimsy that logic was? While your cousin was building up his college resume with volunteer hours and extracurriculars, where were you? When you hit 30 with no job, no savings, and a broken marriage, guess who she's going to blame? She'll say, It was that stepmother's fault, she never kept him in line. Tyler's face burned red. But even then he couldn't bring himself to admit he'd been led down the wrong path. And looking at him, defensive, angry, stubborn, I felt only one thing: complete and utter disappointment. But really I was more disappointed in myself. 15 years. 15 years of cooking, cleaning, caregiving. For what? For a house full of people who still refused to acknowledge me as anything but an outsider. I don't want to argue with you anymore, I said coldly. Go ahead, make a list. Everything I ever ate, every dollar I ever cost you. Itemize it, calculate the total. I'll pay it all back. But I'm leaving this marriage. That part's non-negotiable. Ronald's brows furrowed. His face was tight with panic. He opened his mouth like he wanted to speak, then hesitated. His knees bent ever so slightly, like he might actually try to kneel. But before he could make his move, Tyler jumped in and ruined it. Oh, you want to talk money? Fine, let's hope. Those 2 properties of yours. The savings accounts. They were all acquired after you married my dad. That makes them marital assets. My dad's entitled to half. The air in the room shifted. My breath caught for a second. So that was it. All that apologizing, all that fake remorse. It was just the warm-up act. I stood up slowly, my gaze locked on Tyler. I spoke slowly, every word like a hammer. I told you when you were little, you should study law. Learn how the world really works. But you didn't listen. And now look at you, you can't even tell the difference between marital property and personal inheritance. You ever heard the term notarized will? I let the corner of my mouth curl into a cold smile. Tyler looked confused. But Ronald, his face shifted immediately. He knew exactly what I meant. My mother, before she passed, had signed a notarized will, witnessed by 2 impartial parties and filed with a certified public notary. It stated, in no uncertain terms, that all her properties, bank accounts, and investments were mine and mine alone. None of it could be claimed by my husband or his child. Not even in marriage. Those assets were not, and never would be, community property. The moment she died, that will went into effect. She left me a legal shield. She saw through people long before I ever did. Some folks play the saint so well. But peel back the surface and what's left is just cold strategy and self-interest. Ronald's expression changed instantly. Gone was the man who just minutes ago looked like he might cry from remorse. Now he looked like a gambler who just realized he'd bet everything on the wrong hand. Your mom, she actually had it notarized? He sounded like someone who'd just fallen into a pit they hadn't seen coming. I remembered what Diane said to me that day I told her I was meeting with a lawyer. You're 50, Grace. Why stir the pot now? Ronald doesn't seem like the type to go after your assets. And I wanted to believe her. Because deep down, who doesn't want to believe the person they loved for 15 years might still be decent? Who doesn't hope that all those years weren't just a waste? But reality doesn't care about your hopes. It's blunt. And cruel. And it always, eventually, strips the mask away. I remember the day I married Ronald 15 years ago. He looked at me with tears in his eyes. He told me I was an incredible woman. He promised he'd never touch a single cent of my family's money. He thanked me for accepting Tyler. He swore he'd treat me well for the rest of his life. Back then he really meant it. But he changed. I don't even know exactly when. Maybe it started when my father passed away. When my mother's health began to decline. Maybe it was the moment I started relying more on the marriage than I should have. When he realized I had fewer places left to go. I stood up and walked to the door, opened it and gave the 2 of them a small wave. Yes, my dad did admire you. He thought you were a decent man, honest, reliable. But what did you do with that? You thought his approval meant I'd spend the rest of my life being your free housekeeper? Cooking, cleaning, and carrying the weight of your lives on my back, emotionally and otherwise. You got it wrong. The one who made the real decision wasn't my dad. It was my mom. She outlived him. And she saw things more clearly. Before she passed, she looked me dead in the eye and said, "The people around you? You can't rely on them." She worried Ronald would turn his back on me one day. That's why she had her will notarized, locked down airtight. At the time I thought she was being paranoid. Turns out she was right. Ronald and Tyler stood in my doorway, no longer looking like men apologizing. They looked like performers caught mid-act, their costumes falling apart under the lights. As they turned to leave, Ronald threw one last bitter line over his shoulder. Your mom was ruthless. And you? You're cold as hell. 15 years of marriage. Doesn't that count for anything? No love left, no grace, no mercy. I gently closed the door behind them. My voice was flat, calm, final. Compared to working for free for 15 years, and almost handing over everything I had, this is me being merciful. I received the signed divorce papers from Ronald on a quiet afternoon while walking a narrow trail through the hills. Every step felt like effort. The wind was sharp, the ground uneven. I walked, paused, walked again like I was walking through the pain of the last decade, breaking it up with every footfall. Step by step, I crushed the old weight under my heels. And I didn't look back. At the overlook, I pulled out my phone and took a photo of the view. Broad, quiet, beautiful. Then I posted it to social media with a single caption. Even alone, the view is still beautiful. After a while, a young man walked up beside me. Mid-20s maybe. About Tyler's age. He glanced over and smiled. "Ma'am, would you like me to take a photo for you?" His voice was kind, gentle. Not like Tyler's cold, transactional tone. This young man didn't look like I was intruding on his life. He offered with warmth, adjusted my position for better lighting, even helped me find the best angle. "I really like your red dress," he said with a bright smile. "It suits you so well, it just lights you up." I looked down at myself. It was a dress I'd bought after the divorce. Fire red, bold like a sunset. Before, I used to wear nothing but dull, muted colors. Ronald once told me I was too old to wear red, that it looked desperate, like someone trying too hard not to age. And I believed him. I actually believed that made sense. But now I see how ridiculous that was. A man who never treated me like family got to dictate how I dressed, how I saw myself. For years. The young man snapped the photo. I opened my phone and looked. There I was. Hair graying. Wrinkles at the corners of my eyes. But standing tall in the sunlight, eyes bright. I looked like I was glowing again. That glow. It wasn't about youth. It was freedom. The young man looked at me curiously. "Are you here alone? Your family didn't come with you." I glanced down at the photo of myself in the red dress, slipped the phone back into my pocket and smiled. "No. I don't have a family." He paused just for a second like my words caught him off guard. He glanced at me, his expression suddenly touched with concern. Someone in the distance was calling his name. It sounded like family. But he didn't respond. Instead, he slowed his pace to walk beside me, like he didn't want to leave me alone. "Ma'am," he said softly, "look at this place. It's incredible. There's still so much beauty in the world to see. If you're hurting, your loved ones wouldn't want that. Not from wherever they are now." His tone was sincere if a little awkward. He probably thought I was grieving someone. I gave a quiet laugh and shook my head. "My parents did pass, yes. But I don't have a husband. No kids either." His eyes widened. A bit dramatically. "Seriously? Well, you're honestly kind of a badass." I blinked, surprised, and then laughed, for real this time. He must have seen the confusion in my face because he quickly added, "I mean, look, most people my age are drowning in stuff. Mortgages, car payments, student loans. Getting married is risky, raising kids is even scarier. Honestly, we're all too stressed to really live." He rattled it all off with a mix of dry humor and sharp truth. Caught me off guard. Back when I was young, I never thought about any of that. We just assumed you'd marry, have kids, make a life. As for houses and savings, my parents left me 2 apartments and enough to live comfortably. I never struggled financially. And yet, after getting married, I somehow became a supporting character in someone else's life. All my needs met on paper, and still I felt like I needed permission just to breathe. I sighed and murmured, "Maybe that's the problem." Then I changed the subject. "So tell me, your generation isn't afraid of growing old alone? No one to find you if you collapse in the kitchen?" He didn't even hesitate. "I read something once," he said. "Even if someone finds you after you're dead, what difference does it make? It's not like they can bring you back." He shrugged. "Besides loneliness, that's the default setting. Company is a bonus, not a guarantee." I stopped walking and stood at the edge of the overlook, gazing out over the canyon. The red rock stretched endlessly into the horizon, the sky melting into amber and rose. The wind whipped around us, but in my chest there was nothing but calm. They say young people don't take life seriously, but maybe the truth is, they just figured it out sooner than we did. I stayed there watching the sun dip below the ridge, painting the sky in streaks of fire, when my phone suddenly buzzed. One look at the text message and I almost burst out laughing. Fine, I'll divorce. But over the past 15 years I gave you about $1,000 a month. Pay me $60,000 and I'll sign. 60 grand? You really had the nerve. I immediately dialed Valerie. I told her that if she could get me out of this marriage clean and airtight, I'd pay her $20,000 in fees, worth every penny if it meant that man didn't get a dime from me. Let's be honest. My little accounting exercise was never sincere. It was bait. He actually thought I was going to let him walk away with part of my life. Less than 2 weeks later, Ronald texted me again, this time sounding defeated. He said he was dropping all financial claims. He just wanted it over. He was ready to sign. I stared at the screen for a moment. Had he grown a conscience? Finally realized what I'd swallowed for 15 years? Was this his idea of making things right, walking away with nothing? I forwarded the message to Valerie. She called me not long after, her tone carrying a hint of smug satisfaction. Turns out your husband's been accepting gifts from students' parents for years. Travel vouchers, prepaid gift cards, even straight-up cash. And some of the school reimbursements he filed look suspicious. I understood her perfectly. I already gave him a quiet warning, Valerie continued. If those little gifts ever make it to the state board, or the press, he could lose his teaching license overnight. He knows I've got the goods. That's why he backed down so fast. I blinked, stunned. I'd expected this divorce to drag on for months, end in a tangle of legal fees and bitterness. But Valerie had him backed into a corner within days, without even breaking a sweat. She didn't sound fully satisfied, though. I was honestly tempted to go for more, she admitted almost casually. But maybe letting him walk away empty-handed is your best win. I stood there, phone in hand, bathed in the soft gold of the setting sun. My eyes prickled. To everyone else, sure, I won. But only I knew what this marriage really cost me. 15 years. 15 years of laundry, groceries, budgeting, cooking, tending to a boy who never once called me mom. No paycheck. No gratitude. Just expectation and silence. My savings chipped away to cover household needs. My routines reshaped to suit their preferences. Even a red dress, too bold, too attention-seeking, was off limits just because he didn't like it. And all of that didn't count as a loss? I exhaled slowly, eyes fixed on the horizon. For the first time in years, my chest didn't feel so tight. A year later, I rented a small corner storefront across from a public elementary school downtown. It wasn't big, but it was warm. Wooden bookshelves stood neatly in rows. Kids' artwork hung on the walls in mismatched frames. Sunlight poured in through the tall windows, mixing with the smell of old pages and fresh coffee. I named it Page Turners. Because every book, every person, every choice, that's a new chapter. I didn't have children of my own, so I decided the kids who wandered in after school could be mine. In little fleeting ways. The store? It was a quiet dream I'd carried for decades. Ever since I left teaching, I'd wanted to open a bookshop next to a school. A place where kids could read freely, talk about characters and galaxies and wild ideas. A soft place for their minds, and for mine. At 3:30 sharp every afternoon, the bell over the door would start ringing non-stop. Hi, Miss Michelle. Do you still have Charlotte's Web? Do you have any books about space? Something for a 4th grader. They called me Miss Michelle, sometimes Granny M. I never corrected them. When I looked into those bright, curious faces, I saw myself at that age. Back when I'd disappear into the library for hours, dreaming about pyramids in Egypt, whale songs in the deep sea, and stars in distant galaxies. But life happened. Work. Marriage. 15 years of living the version of myself other people needed me to be. Now I finally had a world of my own. No one I had to please. Nowhere I had to go. This bookstore? It was my little universe. When Diane stopped by, I was curled up in the reading nook, nose in a novel. She taught 3rd grade across the street and dropped in almost every afternoon before heading home. Been open a month now. How's it going? She asked, setting her bag down. It's good. I glanced outside at the flood of kids and parents spilling out of the school. I couldn't help smiling. She gave me a sideways look. You're reading with those granny glasses on and you're telling me it's good? I laughed, slipping them off. Sure, my eyes are old. But my heart isn't. She tilted her head, a little teasing. Seriously though, have you thought about a retirement community? The nice ones have gourmet meals, staff that wait on you hand and foot, gyms, massage chairs. Give them enough money and no one gives you attitude. I smiled. You don't get it. People don't stay alive because someone takes care of them. They stay alive because they have something to wake up for. She paused. Didn't say anything at first. Then finally let out a long, quiet sigh. A lot of women her age don't get it. They wonder why a woman over 50 would stay single, why she wouldn't rush to remarry or check herself into some luxury senior condo. They think no man, no kids, no family equals someone to be pitied. But they don't know. For me, this is where life actually began. After Diane left, I locked up the shop and strolled a few blocks back to my little apartment near the elementary school. Dinner was a simple chicken burrito, just the way I liked it. Afterward, I took a walk in the park. The hum of people around me made me feel alive. Other than Diane, no one knew I lived nearby. And I liked it that way, low-key, quiet, free. That night, the second my head hit the pillow, I was out. Those years of sleepless nights, of choking on chores and criticism and silence, were over. The divorce cured my insomnia better than any pill ever could. I honestly didn't expect to see Valerie again. She walked into the shop one afternoon holding her daughter's hand, that same gentle but distant smile on her face. He picked up a copy of 100 Years of Solitude. I couldn't help but grin. That one. You picking it for you or for her? I asked. Valerie handed me the book, her tone light but direct. It's for my daughter. I understood instantly. He was an only child too. Valerie stayed a while. Helped me reorganize a few shelves, watched as I rang up customers, wiped the counters, tidied the kids' reading corner. Then as I passed her to stock a new display, she looked up and gave me a quiet thumbs up. Michelle, you're fearless. And you live free. You, more than most, understand that loneliness doesn't mean unhappiness. I nodded. He was right. This past year of living alone had its moments of solitude, sure. But more than anything, it brought peace. No one snapping at me to hurry up. No whispers behind my back calling me overbearing. No one treating me like a ghost in my own home. Do you regret it? She asked suddenly, her voice surprisingly serious. Of course, I knew what she meant. Did I regret walking away from that family? I glanced out the window where twilight had started to settle over the street. Then I said it plain and simple. Not one bit. Look at me now, finally breathing. She smiled and something behind her eyes softened, like something that had been coiled tight inside her finally loosened. Then her tone shifted, playful, conspiratorial. Oh, and I've got something you might want to hear. I raised an eyebrow but didn't speak. Ronald, your ex? He's in trouble. Still, I didn't say a word. Just let her continue. Apparently, some distant cousin of his got drunk playing bridge and spilled the beans. Said Ronald was bumping kids into the honor class in exchange for parent gifts. Gift cards, cash, the works. Some parent overheard and filed a complaint. Now the district board's all over it. I gave a dry little hum. Not surprised. Not rattled. I already knew. The drunk cousin? That was his sister. Weeks ago, Ronald had been blowing up my phone, voice dripping with contrition. Michelle, we were wrong about you. Chris's aunt wasn't who we thought she was. We were blind. Chris regrets it too. Would you come home? Just give us another chance. He sounded like someone who just discovered the electric bill, the water bill, and the tuition receipts all landed in his lap at once. I hung up laughing. Ronald talked about regret like it was born from guilt. But I knew better, it was born from math. He finally realized what life cost without my monthly contributions. And when he found out I'd sold both apartments, he panicked. He called me dozens of times, cycling through burner numbers. I changed my SIM card. Deleted every contact. I thought that would be the end of it. Then one day while scrolling I stumbled across Chris's social media. A selfie at Disneyland. Captioned, "Family, you're forever home." You see what kind of people they are. Mouths full of apologies 1 minute. Front row for the fireworks the next. But honestly, I didn't care anymore. I knew deep down. Karma doesn't come early. It comes exactly when it's supposed to. I turned to Valerie and asked, half curious. You sure are keeping up with their drama, huh? She blinked then laughed a little, caught off guard. Maybe I got a little too emotionally invested when I helped clean up their financial mess. Watching them eat dirt now, it feels oddly therapeutic. I nodded, not pushing further. All right, enough about them, I said, waving my hand. Talking about them too much ruins the mood anyway. So tell me, Why did you buy 100 years of solitude for your daughter? Valerie lowered her gaze, thinking for a moment. A flicker of something unreadable passed through her eyes. To be honest, she said quietly, she's going to be my only child. Not because I can't have more. I just don't want to. One daughter is enough. But I want her to understand something early on, that solitude isn't something to be afraid of. I looked at her and something in me softened. He was right. I remembered that one line from the book so vividly. No one has ever been able to escape from solitude. It's not a place you leave, it's something that lives with you. Loneliness isn't just a moment. It's a companion you carry your whole life. What really hurts isn't being alone. It's thinking you've finally found connection, only to realize you're more alone than ever. As Valerie gathered her things to leave, she gave me one last piece of unsolicited advice. You should hire someone, she said gently. You're not young anymore, Michelle. I worry about you running this place alone. What if something happens and no one knows? I smiled, didn't answer. Instead, I thought of the young man from the hiking trail, the one who took my photo, and the words he'd left me with. So what if someone finds you? It's not like they can bring you back. He was right. In the end, life is just a long journey toward making peace with yourself. I've already shed so much baggage. There's no reason to pick up anyone else's expectations. What I have now is simple. Tend to this little bookstore. Finish the books I've yet to read. Let the sun hit my shoulders. Brew a cup of coffee when the mood calls for it. Everything else. That can wait on time.